right, welcome to tonight's Tanya class. We are studying in Tanya. We're in the third section of Tanya, Igeret Teshuva. We're holding to Perek Zayin, chapter 7 in Igeret Teshuva. So tonight's class, I always try to give like a theme to the class, because there is a theme to the class. And tonight's class theme is that Teshuva, when a person repents, you don't want it to be a fleeting experience. You want Teshuva to last forever. If you finally made the U-turn, and you finally basically let go of your old ways, and you finally embrace new ways, so you want it to what? You want it to last. So that's the theme of tonight's chapter, where the Alter is going to show you how Teshuva is not just going to be a fleeting experience or a one-time shot, but you'll be able to take it and run with it. Okay. So the Alter Rebbe begins and he says that up until now, we all learned, the Alter Rebbe taught us a revolutionary idea of Tanya, Igeret Teshuva, that what is Teshuva? Teshuva is very simple. What is simple returning to God? That means if God forbid someone sinned, that's it, you're letting go of sinning. You're agreeing from today on, no more sinning. What does that mean, no more sinning? In our language, right, that we learned here, no more disconnection from God. My goal from now on is, I don't want to be disconnected, therefore I'm not going to sin, I just want to be connected. That's Teshuva. That's the Alter explaining that's Teshuva. Now, we learned Kabbalistically, why is it called Teshuva? Because Teshuva, we learned is from two words, Tashuv Hey. Because since we come from the infinite part of God, the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and when we sin, what happens like a spring we discussed last week? When we sin and we go down to the world of Kelipot Sitra Achra, who do we schlep with us? Who do we pull down with us? Hashem. In the Kelipot Sitra Achra, we turn Hashem. So Hashem left this beautiful abode where it was clean and neat and everything was beautiful. And guess what? Hashem is unfortunately swimming in the mud of Kelipot and Sitra Achra. So what does Teshuva mean? Tashuv Hey, to return the Hey of God's name, the one that gives us our life force, back to a beautiful, nice, shining, spiritual palace where everything is holy, everything is special, and everything is great. That is basically what we learned in Igeret Teshuva up until this week. So comes along the Alter Rebbe and he says, that's great, that's wonderful. But we know that it's not just enough to do Teshuva, where I'm agreeing not to sin, and I want to bring back the hay, but I want, what is the biggest thing in America? Everybody wants to buy an insurance policy. You want to make sure, right, you buy a house, insurance. Just in case, right? If something happens, you want to be able to have, funds to rebuild a house or whatever, any destruction, you should be able to rebuild. Why? Because we want security. That whatever we have, whether it's a house, a car, planes, yachts, right, whatever we own, we want it to be there. No, so that's what in the physical world. How much more so in the spiritual world? That means if I went ahead and I said, oh my gosh, that's it. I'm not sinning anymore. I am going to only connect to God. I'm not going to be disconnected. So you want to make sure that lasts. What is that called in Hebrew? In Hebrew it's called emes. Emes means something which is truth. In other words, if one day you're connected to God and one day you're disconnected to God. One day you have a relationship with God, and one day you ignore the relationship. One day you destroy the relationship. The problem is that even when you have the relationship, it's not a real relationship. It looks like it's a real relationship. It looks like you're connected to God. But if tomorrow you're going to be back sinning, the question is, why one day sinning, one day not sinning, one day doing the mitzvot, one day not doing the mitzvot? Is it real or not real? And the truth is that maybe while you're doing it, yeah, fine, it's a mitzvah. Got it. But the relationship is not there. Because if it was a real relationship, it would always have been, it would be, and always will be. Now, true, we mess up at times, and that's why the concept of Teshuva exists. But Teshuva shouldn't be, okay, I'm doing Teshuva, I'm back, oh my gosh, life is back to normal. What happens a week later? I'm slipping again? Again, we're human. No one's judging. But the point is that why am I slipping again? In other words, if you want Teshuva to be real, not just a fleeting experience where it happens, and then oh my gosh, what happened to me all of a sudden? You want the Teshuva to be what emes, real. That means when you decide that you're letting go of the ways of the past, and you decide you're not going to sin anymore, and you decide you're not going to be disconnected from God anymore, and from now on you're going to be connected to God, you want it to be what? Emes. You want it to last. That forever, from here on, you got the insurance policy that actually works, that it pays. that you're from now on not going to be disconnected and you'll always be connected. And the Alter Rebbe quotes a verse that says, Svas emes tikun la'ad, that the language of truth means that it lasts forever. So you want the Teshuva to be the emes, you want it to last forever. That's one point that the Alter Rebbe says. It's fine. As okay, we got it. That's Teshuva. But how do we make it that it lasts? And it's emes. Point number two, the Alter Rebbe says, how do we make sure not only that it's emes, that it's truth, but you want to make sure it's yashar. Yashar means it's straight. What does it mean it's straight? It's pure. What does that mean? So for example, there are many reasons why people repent. Someone can repent because somebody went through a tough time, went through a trauma, went through, God forbid, let's say someone got sick. Oh my gosh, God. So why are you returning to God? Because you love God, or you got into trouble, so you're returning to God. The problem is if you're returning to God for a side reason, or because of a drama or trauma in your life, then what happens when the trauma wears off? Maybe you'll say, maybe not, we don't know. But the point Alter is making is, he'd like to, here in this chapter 7, show us a path of Teshuva that A is emes. That means you take this path, you will always be on the level of a Baal Teshuva. That means your Hey, that you connect to God, will always be in its right spot. Always, always. And B, you're going to do it from a healthy way. Not because of a challenge, not because of a scare that you got, not because of a health issue, not because of any ulterior motive, other than you want to be one with God. So here the Alter Rebbe says, in this chapter, which is a beautiful chapter, if you think about it, he's going to show you how you can create Teshuva not as a fleeting moment, not as a sign of desperation, but a real returning to God, where you don't want to sin anymore and you want to be one with God, but one that's going to last, and one that's going to happen from a healthy procedure and a healthy perspective, that you're going to be healthy about it and the relationship is going to be healthy. So the Alter Rebbe says, in order to do that, you need to have it has to come from a healthy way. In Hebrew it's called hisboinenus. In English I think it's called meditation. You have to work on it. It's a project that if you work on it and you're sincere about it and you put the effort into it, then it will last. So the Alter Rebbe lays out two areas. We have to deal with it from two ways. Again, the goal is going to be, like we said before, the goal is that the Teshuva is going to be emes. That means it's going to last forever, God willing. And it's going to come from what? A healthy place, from a real place. So the Alter Rebbe says there's two things that have to happen. Two ingredients. You get these two ingredients, you get them, you understand it, and you put it into practice, you will have Teshuva for the rest of your life, and it will be done from a healthy way, and therefore it's going to last. So the first thing the Alter Rebbe says, what has to happen is, a person has to do some serious meditation and realize what's really going on here. Think about for a moment what happens when a person sins. In other words, God, as we discussed before in the previous chapters, the infinite God, Yud Kei Vav Kei, who is living in the infinite space, decided to give you your life. Our life comes, our creation, our continual existence comes from the infinite part of God. God is with us. God is with us from the morning till at night, while we're sleeping. Through our good times and through our challenging times, God is always with us. So when life is great, when you're sitting and studying Torah and you're praying and you're doing mitzvot, God is right with you. Right there, right with you. What happens when a person sins and a person does things against God? God doesn't say, bye-bye, I'm not you, I don't know you. Because if we did, we wouldn't exist. God comes with you. God comes with you. In your darkest moments, God's always with you. Whether you feel it or appreciate it, it's irrelevant. God is with you. So the Alter Rebbe says, now that you know that what? God is with you, you just went ahead and you sinned, you rebelled against God, you didn't do what you were supposed to, or you did what you shouldn't have done. Who is there right with you? God. So if you take for a moment and back to the idea of meditation, He's boinenus, He's boidedus, and you meditate in the fact that this infinite God, who's a classy God, guess where He's hanging out now? I schlepped Him down into a place where it's dark, no respect for God, no acknowledgement of God's existence, and it's all about the I. I took God from a holy place, and I brought him down to the Kelipot. That should evoke within you real what? And the term he uses is rachamim. Rachamim is rachmanis. Rachamim is compassion for yourself what you've done, but more importantly, you pull the Shechina down. And the more you meditate on the fact that the Shechina is now in Gullus, the Shechina is now in exile, the Shechina is with the Kelipot and Sitra Achra, how are you going to feel?
Guilty.
That's Jewish. That's a good word. You're going to feel guilty, Jewish guilt. Okay, that's an English Jewish, especially from a mother or grandmother to say that.
Oh, remorse.
How are you going to feel?
Remorse.
Remorse, exactly. It's a better word, yes, okay. In other words like this. Let's give a simple example. You're sitting wherever you're at, whether at home or at work, in the street, and our mind, that's where the godly soul sits. So in our mind, you want to use that. We spoke about it last week. High rent district. What do you want to use that for? Praying, Torah study, how to do a mitzvah, how to help someone do a mitzvah, positive thoughts. But all of a sudden, in this mind, high rent district, you start thinking negative thoughts, depressing thoughts, and inappropriate thoughts. Who is right there with you in your mind and in your thoughts? God. It means you schlepped God into such dark, and again, God's happy to be there with you, but the fact is, I schlepped him in. Why couldn't I have taken God to a nice place? Here, let me ask you a simple question. Let's say you're in a relationship and you want to go out with your spouse to a nice evening, right? So you take them to a nice, fancy, restaurant or some nice event, etc. Right? And then it comes a special evening. What happens if you take them to some kind of sanitation department? That's what we're going out tonight for a date. What's your spouse going to think? And you actually go there and dig up the garbage. Let's find some leftover food. Maybe we can have dinner. I mean, you're laughing because who would even think of something like that? But guess what? When we sin, you know what we're doing? We're taking God down to the sanitation department and we're finding some of the leftover food that probably has maggots growing on it. I mean, it has to be gruesome. Maggots growing on it. And guess what? God's there with us, helping us look through the maggots. Now, if you think about that for a little bit, in a clear moment, you go, oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. Why did I do that? So in other words, you want to create not a 3D, a 4D, right? Picture, not even picture, everything's videos. Video of me taking God, make a movie out of this, schlepping him into the maggots and the trash and the lowest of the low. How are you going to feel about it? If you have a little heart and a little mind.
Not good.
Not good. Exactly. So in other words, as you think about the fact that you went to the trash and you schlepped God with you to the trash and you hung out there for 3-4 hours, maybe some more, maybe more than 3-4 hours, right? And you hung out there, you're not going to feel great about it. Now, as you think about that, that's part A. We're going to get to part B in a second. But as you think about that, guess what happens? Do you want to go back there? Do you want to hang out there still?
No.
As you realize what you're doing, do you want to hang out there? No, I want to get out of here. I want to get out of here. But me, now that I realized and I meditated on it, do I even ever want to go back there? No. Why would I? First of all, I want to get out of here. But now that I want to get out of here, I don't want to ever come back again. So in other words, what the Alter Rebbe was saying is, if you just say, okay, fine, I'm not sinning anymore, that's wonderful. Why don't you sin tomorrow? Because we sin, we don't intentionally sin. We're foolish, we make mistakes, we sin. But if you actually realize what you did, that you schlepped God into the lowest of lowest, and you realize in a real image of what you're doing, would you do it again? Never. You wouldn't do it. So phase one is to really realize that what? That you mamish went down to the lowest of lowest, and you schlepped God with you. That's phase one. Now, the Alter Rebbe says, before we get to phase 2, second part, when should you do this? When should you do this? And this is very important. If what happens if you do this all throughout the day? Are you going to have a productive day? No. So this is like a serious time. This is like time that you want to focus, but also you don't want to disrupt your life. You're supposed to do it at Tikun Chatzot. People get up at midnight and they pray for the fact of the destruction of the temple and the fact that the Shechina is in Galus. That's what Tikun Chatzot is for. In other words, when you get up at Tikun Chatzot, what are you praying for? The fact that the Shechina, God, is in Galut. And when you not only pray, but say the words, but you start thinking about it, oh my gosh, literally, God, has to hang out with all this stuff, which is repulsive. Exactly, right? We're not going to repeat that word here. But the lowest of the lowest, right? And the Alter says, and you become bitter over it. Not that you become a bitter person. You become bitter over the fact that you and God are hanging out, right? In the lowest of the lowest. However you want, whichever language you want to translate what that means. Emily translated it in Yiddish. She did. She gave it a name. We're not going to repeat the name. It's a Tanya class. It's not a bad name. It is what it is. Okay. So when does one do this? Tikun Chatzos. Okay. So that is part number 1. Part number 1 is focusing on the positive. We have a godly soul. It's a positive thought, by the way. It's 100% positive. God gave us the biggest gift, the godly soul. Our godly soul took a journey where? Down into the lowest of the lowest. God is with us. And it's, oh my gosh, I feel bad I did that. And guess what? I'm making resolve. I'm never going to bring him down there. That's point number 1. We do it Tikun Chatzot. Then comes along, Alter Rebbe says, that's part 1, that's great. The problem is, who feels bad? We have 2 partners. Who feels bad? Who are the 2 partners? Let's establish. Who are the 2 partners? The godly soul and the animal soul. So who feels bad? The godly soul or the animal soul?
The godly soul.
The godly soul. So in other words, the first half, what it does is it empowers the godly soul not to allow itself to be dragged down. You got it? The first half is only addressing the godly soul. The animal soul says, who cares? So what? So God's in the garbage. Animals, an animal soul is an animal. Where does the animals hang out? In the garbage. Right? The animal souls hang out in the garbage. That's what they do. They're animals. Where do animals eat? From a fancy restaurant or from the trash? Right? Try it out. Open the garbage in the street, leave it open, see how fast animals come. You'll have the answer, right? So the first part out there addresses the godly soul. And that works for the godly soul. The problem is, the godly soul has a partner in crime. Who's the partner? The animal soul. And the animal soul, that's where it hangs out, actually. It hangs out in the garbage. So here you have a problem. You have the animal soul that is schlepping God, right, into the trash. How are you going to deal with the animal soul? So now that it teaches us how to attack and to dilute and to oppress and to reduce the power the animal soul has. And the Alter Rebbe says very, very simple. The Alter Rebbe says like this, and this is very, very interesting, and it's important to know this. You always want to know your enemy. So the godly soul we dealt with, we gave him a route, he knows what he has to do. From now on, he just thinks what he's doing. And like, oh my gosh, that's like neurotic. I'm not doing that. Done. Now, let's talk about the animal soul. The Alter Rebbe says, what is the animal soul by definition? Ego. Very good. Excellent. 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 So the animal soul by definition is, what is ego? What does ego mean? What does ego mean?
Selfish.
That's an English word. What does ego mean? So take, for example, if you have chametz and matzah, right? Matzah is flour and water, and you see what you get. You take the same ingredients, and you allow it to rise. You have this big challah, nice big challah. So the matzah has the same, let's say, cup of flour and water, same dimension. The challah has the same thing. The difference is, here it rose. Now, what made this bigger?
Yeast.
Intrinsically.
Yeast.
Air. Water. Yeah. Yeast.
Nothing.
What?
Nothing.
Excellent. What made it blow up? And the answer is intrinsically nothing. What? The biggest proof, you take the challah, people do this. Have you ever seen people do this?
Right.
And you squeeze it down, and you press it down. What happens? It becomes like a matzah.
Yeah.
Whoa! It was a challah. It was a beautiful challah. Well, how did it turn into like a piece of flat wafer? And the answer is, and this is key. This is very, very important. If you get this, it will help you with the process. The intrinsic value of the animal soul, of the ego, of the Yetzer Hara is what? Nothing. Wow. Now, I want you to get this. The intrinsic value of the animal soul is nothing. Now, if it was a something, guess what? We're going to have to figure out how to get rid of something. Because the something can't just get rid of something. But if it's a nothing, to begin with, it's nothing.
Yeah.
It's a nothing. So how do you get rid of a nothing?
Just let it go.
If you have this thing blown up, now the blown up part is a nothing. So how do you expose the nothing? Huh?
Just let it go. Forget about
it. How do you expose that it's nothing? All you need to do is, very simple. If I have the matzah here and I have this challah that blew up, and intrinsically it's the same as this, but it blew up, but really the blow up is really what? Nothing. So what do I do to get rid of it?
Gotta do something.
What?
Eat it.
No, but nothing. No, but again, there's nothing there.
Press it down.
Oh, very good. Shh. Hey, where did it go? It was never there to begin with. What's it called? I think in magic they call it, in Hebrew it's called achizas einayim.
An illusion?
An illusion, exactly.
There you go.
You push it down. Where is it? I'm not a magician. Where is it? And the answer is, you know why it's not there? Because it was never there to begin with. It was never there to begin with. So the Alter Rebbe uses two words. Our job to get, you want to get rid of the animal soul? Two Hebrew words to use. Levatesh, bitush. You're pushing it down. Ulachnia, to get it to humble itself. You're not doing anything. You're just taking this blow up and you're putting it down. Mm-hmm. That's all. Now, again, so the key is, we dealt before with the godly soul. Now we're focusing on the animal soul. We have an animal soul, right? It loves the trash. And it doesn't mind bringing it. Gosh, I'll just relax. Who's this guy that love? Who is he? Shh. All you do is push it down.
Be humble.
You have to humble it. Not be humble, because you're talking the animal. Just humble it. Now, so that's the, so to speak, that's the yad. That's the destination. The destination is to take the animal soul, to take the Yetzer Hara, to take the evil inclination, and push it down. And you're not going to have resistance. It's not there with steel studs, or titanium, or anything strong. It's ear. Shh. Wow, that was so easy. But guess what? You know what's the minute you let go? Shh. Right? You got to hold it down. You got to hold it down. So how do you hold it down? See, Alter Rebbe says the way you do it is very simple. By creating your heart, which we all have, and your heart thinks about the fact that God's in Galut, and by having a leiv nishbar, which means a broken heart, and v'nichna, and you like push down the heart, where it's not arrogant. Same idea, right? You're pushing it down. You're humbling the heart. This way, you break and you humble the animal soul, which really doesn't even exist to begin with. That's the goal. So the question is, how does one do that? How does one do that? So Alter Rebbe says there's two ways. The first way is an age-old way, and that is by fasting. Why? Very simple. Who likes to eat? I'm talking the good food.
The animal soul.
The animal soul. The godly soul, you know what the godly soul's food is? Another page of Torah, a little more chumash, learning more mitzvot, farbringing, another prayer service, and helping someone else. That's food for the godly soul. Who loves sitting down and eating, right? I mean, even if it's kosher, and even if you make a blessing, but who wants to go to the best restaurant and sushi and et cetera, and has to look good and has to taste good and so on and so on? Who wants that?
Yeah.
The animal soul. The animal soul wants that. So the reality is, the fact that it wants it, is that real? It's not real, because it doesn't even need it. You can live on water, bread, and basic nutrients. Fruits, vegetables, grains. You don't need all this, right, fancy stuff. Now, when you say, thank you so much, but we're going to eat just to sustain ourselves. We're not starving. We're not looking to die. We're looking to live. But we're not going to make a whole idolatry out of the food. And guess what? We're going to fast. Once a week, twice a week. What happens to your animal soul? It withers away. Up to the point where King David, at the end of his life, what did he do to his animal soul? Killed it. How did he kill it? What was the ingredient he used? He fasted. King David fasted a lot. He fasted. And by fasting, he basically killed his animal soul. How do you kill it if it's so strong? And the answer is not strong. It's nothing. It's blown up here. Stop feeding it, and you know what happens? It goes away. It goes away. The problem is that Alter Rebbe says that today it's hard to fast. We're not strong. We're much weaker, so it's really hard to fast physically. Olden days, people were stronger, much healthier, so it didn't really harm them. Today, if you fast, you can get headaches, migraines, and so on and so forth. You need to serve God, so it's an issue with fasting. But that's one way. So the Alter has to come up with something practical for us, and he says like this. He uses two words. I'll say it in Hebrew and I'll translate it. Again, we're focusing on now how to take this thing that blew up his ear, push it down. And the way we do it is what? By our heart becoming a little broken and becoming remorseful. One way we said, how do you do that, is by fasting. The second way the Alter Rebbe says how to do that is by being a morei de chushbana. What does morei de chushbana mean? Morei de chushbana means very simple. Morei means an owner. Chushbana means an accounting. That means very simple. Let's say you have an owner that owns a business. He owns a business, 100% ownership. He has a manager that he pays a nice salary to run his business for him. And the manager works very, very hard and does phenomenal for him. One year, the business not only didn't make money, but it lost huge amounts of money. Now, the manager is going to get paid either way, because he's a hired person, and he gets paid. Whether the business makes money or loses money, the manager gets paid. The owner, when the business makes money, he gets a nice fat check. When the business loses money, who goes home without food? The owner. So he has to borrow, whatever, but that's his business. So let's say this year was a terrible year. So the owner comes to the manager and says, what happened? So he goes, you know what? We ran the statistics. We ran the business just like every year. Everything should be fine. So they make money. People didn't buy it, whatever. We did everything right. We did the right marketing. We have the right, salespeople in place. We're running, the numbers right. The expenses were on top of the expenses. It just didn't make money. Now, could you blame the manager? No. He shows you he did everything right. Is the manager going to go home at night and go sleep well? Yes, he's a paid employee. He does an honest job every day. You can't fault him. He shows up. He's there every day. He does an honest job. He motivates his employees or his staff, whatever it is. And he runs an honest business. He runs an honest job as a manager. He is doing 100% of his job, because if he did something wrong, they would fire him. He didn't do anything wrong. He did everything right. Okay, so hopefully next year will be a better year. The owner has the same data and the same response as the manager. Does the owner go home sleeping that night? No. Because it's my business, and bottom line, the business lost money. He ain't going to be sleeping for many nights. A, because he lost the money and it's a big loss. And B, he wants to get bottom. Why? Why are we losing money? So in other words, the Alter Rebbe says like this: Mara de Chusha means the way an owner makes a calculation. If you're an employee, it's one calculation. I showed up, I did my job. And that's fine. If you didn't show up, that's a whole different story. But if you showed up, you did your job, it made money, did money, it's not my department. But an owner, if it's losing money, oh my gosh, it's losing money. the Alter is the same thing also when it comes to the fact that God is in Galut. You can say, listen, what do you want? I had a hard day, no one was nice to me, this one insulted me, whatever, I was going through a tough time, so I didn't study so much Torah I should have, and I didn't pray, and I didn't do it. That's all good if what? If you're an employee. But if you're an owner and you're serious about the fact that God's in Shechina, not as an employee, because again, you can have every excuse, and I think in Hebrew it's called a heter, right? You have or a kula. You have, right, the rabbi told me it's okay. I got permission, I don't have to go to school, right? I have permission, I don't have to study today. That's very nice and good. No one's going to punish you for it. But the bottom line, if you're the owner, today, did you study Torah or not? Today, did you pray or not? Today, did you do the mitzvot? If you think like an owner, I know I need to study every single day Torah. I know I need to pray every day. I know I need to do mitzvot. And if it's not happening, there's something wrong. In other words, what bothers me is that at the end of the day, is Shechina's and Gullus. And if the Shechina's and Gullus, that bothers me. Not only that, but what happens when a person basically is sinning? So if you're an owner, you say, oh my gosh, at the end of the day, it's true, I'm sinning. And true, you have every reason in the book. But meanwhile, where's God? God's in the garbage with me. And that bothers me. Because when God's in the garbage, you're sitting in the garbage, you're not praying, you're not studying Torah, you're not doing mitzvot. And bottom line is, the work is not getting done. So when a person thinks about the fact that he's an owner, and God, bottom line, is not being revealed, and God is not flourishing, and unfortunately Torah study is not happening, and mitzvot and prayer is not happening, then you're going to start having a broken heart. What happens to the animal soul? Hi, welcome. Come inside. Come. What happened? I'm so happy that you're here. Welcome. Come have a seat by the table, by the chairs, anything you want. What happens to the animal soul? It feels bad. It feels bad. Now, the Alter Rebbe says, one second. One will say, guess what? I didn't transgress some of the big transgressions. I'm careful. The big ones I don't do. A lot of people say, listen, the big stuff I keep. And I don't transgress the big stuff. But listen, some of the small stuff I'm not so careful with. Like what they call, I think, I don't want to use terms, but people say I'm modern Orthodox, etc. Like the small stuff. Doctors, hold on a second. Fine, that's great. The big stuff you're not transgressing, and you're doing all the big stuff. But what happens is, if the small stuff you don't do, now how many times you didn't do the small stuff? Once? Once, it wouldn't be noticeable. You keep on doing it over and over again. So I'll give you a simple example. Let's say, for example, you have a window, and the sun is shining in. So there's two ways you can block it. One is you can put up a plank of wood, thick plank of wood. Guess what? Sun ain't coming in. Done. The other way, you put a screen. Why doesn't you put a screen? So now it's like sun comes in, let's say 10% less. Why doesn't you put another screen and another screen? Even though the first screen only blocked it, let's say 10%, but if you put on 100 screens, it will have the same effect as a thick piece of wood. Notice the Alter Rebbe is saying is that when a person transgresses a big one, that's putting on a big piece of wood. That's blocking you and God. But if you do a bunch of small stuff that you shouldn't be doing, or you miss out a bunch of things that you shouldn't be doing, small stuff, that's as equal as a big thick piece of wood. So either way, you're blocking God's light to come in. And the Alter Rebbe goes into giving some examples. He says, like, for example, let's say, for example, someone comes over to you and says, I need help. Charity. Now we know, according to Torah, that you have to give. Why don't you make believe you don't see him? Right? Innocent, I make believe I don't see him. The Alter Rebbe says, guess what? You might look like that, it's a small thing. But the reality is, guess what? The Alter Rebbe quotes a verse that shows us that when a person basically ignores someone that asks for charity, the verse he quotes is Neshama lecha penya im levavcha bli al. That means you're basically turning your heart away. Bli al means that literally you are like as if you're worshiping idols, and that's one of the big three sins. Gilei aroyos, shvichas dam and avodah zara. So when a person avoids giving someone charity, big thing of charity. No. Guess what? It's a big one because that's almost like idolatry. Or, for example, and unfortunately, the Tanya tells us there's 3 sins that a person is hard to transgress every day, and one of them is unfortunately Lashon Hara, which is speaking right derogatory about someone, which we'll actually have tonight in JLI course, is like all the 3 big sins of Gilei Aroyot, forbidden relationships, Shvichas Dam and killing, and avoid all idolatry. So even though you might say, I do all the big stuff, but guess what? If you start talking Lashon Hara, and you participate in a Lashon Hara conversation, and by the way, that's very easy. 2 seconds, you're already in Lashon Hara zone. That's like transgressing all the 3. So when I do that, if you're like an owner, back to the idea, if you're like an owner, you go, oh my gosh, I am basically disconnecting from God in a big way, even though it's only Lashon Hara. Or for example, the author gives another example, arrogance. You know, when someone's arrogant, whoa, you basically cut God out. So even though you can keep Shabbat and Kashrut and Tefillah and everything, and you should do it all, but if a person's arrogant, you don't work on your midot, you threw God out. Now, even though obviously there's a different punishment between, like, let's say, the big things that you shouldn't be doing, there's death penalty at age 50, age 60, and these don't necessarily have the same punishment, but when it comes to the disconnect, it's the same disconnect. And you're either connected or you're disconnected. So maybe you don't have that punishment, but the disconnected has. And unfortunately, this is, you know what the worst out of everything is? And these are the light things I mentioned. You know what the worst thing that a person can do? What's the worst thing a person can do? The worst thing you can do is, I'll say it in Hebrew, I'll translate, Bitul Torah. What does that mean? We have an obligation to study Torah when? 24/7. You have an exemption. You have to sleep, and you have to work, and you have a spouse, and you have kids, and so, etc. But if you do not have a valid exemption, what should you be doing? You should be having a Chumash, a Mishnah, a Talmud in front of you and studying. And that's why it's good to know some chapters of Mishnayos and Talmud or Tanya by heart. It means if whatever you don't have a book for whatever reason, get the memory going. You know, start quoting a Mishnah. Maybe say quoting Mishnah by Arvis, or let's say Tanya. Tanya would say for Gimel Danida. Start learning by heart, because the Alter Rebbe says when a person does not study Torah, it's worse than anything that you've done, anything that he mentioned before till now. Not only that, and this is very, very important. The Alter Rebbe quotes in the Talmud, the Jerusalem Talmud, that says that when God comes to bring judgment and bring justice, so listen, God has a good heart. So if you plead to God, I'm sorry, He'll look over on almost everything. Even some of the big sins, He'll forgive you. Because God's a loving, forgiving God. But not if you miss an opportunity to study Torah. That's pretty powerful. Knowing that, so what should you be busy doing always? Since you know God's not going to cut you slack on that one, make sure to study Torah always. The other ones, okay, God forgives. Don't, God forbid, sin because God's going to forgive you. You want to do the right thing. I'm saying worst case scenario, if you sin, you miss an opportunity, God will forgive you. But not when it comes to lack of Torah study. And that's why actually when people say Shema at night, Alter Rebbe says that people, when you say Shema before you go to sleep, so you want to ask God for forgiveness, so people accept upon themselves the 4 death penalties. Skila, where they stone someone, Sreifa, right, burn, Hereg, they cut someone's head off with a knife, and Chenek, strangling. Because basically by accepting those death penalties, that on a spiritual level, you say, God, listen, I'm willing to accept that, that allows you to atone for that. Now what's interesting is the Alter Rebbe explains something very, very powerful on a Kabbalistic level, and he says like this, that every single mitzvah, we know God has 4 letters. The infinite name of God is Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. In there, it's powerful stuff. We know the Sefirot comes from there, many other things. But one of the things that the Alter Rebbe explains, that when every single mitzvah, whether it's positive or negative, its shorish, its source, is in one of the 4 letters. That means every mitzvah, every, God forbid, a sin, its shorish is in the 4 letters. So what happens when a person does a mitzvah, when you do a mitzvah? So you strengthen that letter of God's name. If, God forbid, you don't do the mitzvah, so you weaken it. Or if you transgress a negative precept, you're actually weakening it. If you don't transgress, you're making it strong. So we have the power to brighten up the Yud Kei Vav Kei, and unfortunately we have the power to diminish it. So we want to do mitzvah because that will make the Yud Kei Vav Kei strong. God forbid, if we transgress, we're making it weak. And the Alter Rebbe says, for example, let's say somebody, we have an obligation to say the Shema, right, every day. what happens, and he also shows you Kabbalistically, which is important to know this, what happens if a person missed saying Shema one day? Again, you didn't do anything that you shouldn't be doing. You missed. You got up late, you did it after the right time, you're supposed to say Shema, right? In the morning and the evening. And you missed saying Shema, you didn't say Shema. What happens? So fine, on one hand, you missed saying Shema. But the Alter Rebbe now shows you Kabbalistic, you know what happens? What do we say? Every mitzvah is traced back to one of the letters of God's name. So he uses 4 examples he gives you here in terms of the letters. And obviously every single one, all 613, obviously are connected to one. When a person misses Shema, the first letter in God's name, the Yud, it affects that. It weakens it. Obviously vice versa. When you say Shema, that Yud becomes more brighter and stronger. Now when it weakens that, what punishment, what happens when you affect the first letter of God's name, the Yud? Skila. Right, you're stoned. What happens if a person is supposed to put on tefillin every day, and one day you miss putting on tefillin? Every single day, besides Shabbos and Yom Tov. What letter in God's name do you affect? The Hey. The Hey. And the Hey is reference to Sreifa. That's why you got to make sure to put on tefillin every day. Because when you put on tefillin, the Hey becomes wow, and God forbid when you miss it, you dim it. And that affects Sreifa. What happens if a person, for example, is supposed to wear tzitzit every day, and you're not wearing tzitzit? Actually, it's easy. What does a tzitzit look like? It looks like a string, right? So which letter in God's name does it affect? The Vav. And that has to do with what? The idea of Hereg. What happens when a person misses prayer? Just to pray every day, right? Just to pray to God for all your needs that you need. So what happens when a person doesn't pray? That affects the Hey. And that, unfortunately, what is the idea of Chenek? That's the 4th part of Chenek. Now, what happens, so we did the Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Now again, every mitzvah is connected to one there. That's going to give you an example on these 4. And look at it. These are seemingly simple things that unfortunately people miss Shema. Whether it's the morning and the evening. I mean, we're not robots. We're not the angels. We miss once in a while. But look what you do. You're mamish affecting the Yud. Or for example, you miss putting on tefillin one day. I mean, listen, it shouldn't happen, but it happens. You miss it, right? You're affecting the Hey. You don't wear tzitzis, or the tzitzis tears and it's not kosher. It affects the Vav. Or if you're lacking in prayer, it affects the Hey, and so on and so forth. But then there's one item that if you don't do it, it affects every one of the letters. Which one is that? Bittul Torah. Very good. When a person misses an opportunity to study Torah, when you could be studying Torah and you don't, it literally weakens every one of the 4 letters. Wow. Vice versa, on the positive side, every single time you're studying Torah, you know what's happening? It's almost like a digital light bulb, light bulb goes on. The Yud is flashing, the Hey is flashing, right? The Vav and the Hey is flashing. You don't study Torah, it's like you pull the plug out. When you pull the plug out and someone's on a respirator, you're in trouble, right? But the point is the Hey has affected all. Now, let's bring it back full circle. So now, what did Alter Rebbe teach us? 2 things. So when a person goes ahead and he meditates, and a person comes to the point where he's a leiv nishbar, he's broken, look, oh my gosh, I caused the Yud Kei Vav Kei, so to speak, to be totally dimmed in my life. I caused the Yud Kei Vav Kei to come down right into the Kelipot. That will cause the person to do Teshuva, and when a person does Teshuva, real Teshuva means you have remorse for the past, and you have acceptance for the future, and you're committed to what? To having a great future. That is true Teshuva that will last forever, and that will be Teshuva done from a healthy place and from a strong place. So here the Alter Rebbe in chapter 7, Perek Zayin, gives you a full, beautiful picture of how you can create a Teshuva experience that will be meaningful, it will be consistent, it will be solid, and it will last forever. And that is very simple. Take time to meditate, preferably, he says, by night, Tikun Chatzot. On one hand, the godly soul meditates from a positive place. Oh my gosh, what kind of Rachmanis that me and the infinite light of God I schlepped down into the Kelipot. And then for the animal soul, you got to literally destroy it. Look, when I am going ahead and not doing what I'm supposed to, missing Torah study, even if it's a bunch of small stuff, forget about the big stuff. I am totally affecting a breakdown in the Yud Kei Vav Kei. And when I do that, God obviously is not revealed in my life, and obviously it's not a happy experience for me, and I want to be able to be connected to God always. I don't want to be disconnected. And when a person is serious about it, you know what happens then? Then a person returns to God, as you're remorseful for the past, you're accepting on the future, and then you do true tshuva, and that tshuva will last forever. So meditation, as you see from this chapter, is key. That tshuva will be something enduring, that will last forever. It will come from a healthy place, and the tshuva will last, and you're about to bring the hay back where it belongs, and you'll be able to have a great life because you'll be connected to the infinite part of God, the hay, where the hay of God is in its real source, and you'll be getting great and healthy and beautiful and positive energy.